Good evening, hello and welcome. You're with the news today, your primetime destination news, newsmakers, talking points. And this Tuesday night, the big talking point is tried to topple the Iran regime next is Khamenei on Trump's horizon. Trump's former advisor John Bolton will be among my special guests tonight. Also, my ground report. I'm in Mumbai and I'll tell you what's happening in the battle for the Mumbai Municipal Corporation elections, the high voltage, high prestige fight. But first tonight, the big story that's breaking. Donald Trump has once again gone on his Truth Social site to give a big message to Iran's protesters amid speculation that Trump could be even preparing a military strike on Tehran. Trump's message to Iranian protesters, help is on its way. Trump says he's cancelled all meetings with Iranian officials, no question of communicating with them. Trump has condemned the senseless killings in Iran. So Donald Trump once again escalating that war of words with the regime in Tehran. All of this, of course, coming against the backdrop of those violent protests sweeping across Iran. I want to first go across to Pranay Upadhyay, who's joining us. He covers international relations for us. And Pranay, the news coming in, Donald Trump started the day by saying 25% additional tariffs on any country that does business dealings with Iran. Now says help is on its way. How is New Delhi seeing what's happening? Is New Delhi worried that we could see another escalating conflict in the Middle East?
Absolutely, we have our own concern, Rajdeep. We have our people, around 10,000 Indians are there, or people of Indian origin are there in Iran. We have our own diaspora concern. Also, we have our concern because we have our investment in Iran as in the form of Chabahar port. And also, we have been trading with Iran. So therefore, if there is an additional 25% being levied by President Donald Trump, on Iran, trade with Iran, then definitely we have our own concern. And if the trade figure with Iran might be only a small portion of India's, bilateral trade pie, which is of $820 billion. So this only amounts to $1.6 billion or less than that. And we have seen a decrease in bilateral trade with Iran consecutively in the last 4 or 5 years, from $2 billion bilateral trade figure to this has come down to less than $1.6 billion. So there is a decrease. But having said that, there is a concern because this is going to impact in terms of our trade, in terms of our people there, and also in terms of the geopolitics of the region. Because with Iran we have historical linkages. With Iran, with this increasing trend of destabilizing government, that also makes the government of India worried about that.
Right. Pranay Upadhyay joining us with those details. Remember, India's oil trade with Iran has reduced in recent times, but the images of the violent protests that have been sweeping across the country have triggered fresh tensions between Tehran and Washington. What began as public anger over economic hardship is now escalating into the biggest challenge to the Ayatollah Khamenei regime in decades. Hundreds reportedly killed in a sweeping crackdown. And as that unrest deepens, US President Donald Trump has imposed fresh economic penalties, as we said, on countries doing business with Iran, but also appears to be weighing tougher options, including military action. Take a look at our big story tonight.
Images of violent protest that gripped Iran last week. A citizens' protest against economic hardships that soon turned into a fight to dislodge the Ayatollah Khamenei regime. The biggest protest that Shia country has seen in decades. Nearly 600 are dead in a crackdown, according to Western human rights agencies. The Iranian government, on the other hand, claimed nearly 2,000 deaths in what it called attacks by terrorists. US President Donald Trump on Monday announced a 25% tariff on countries that do business with Tehran. Pentagon is set to present Trump with more options to punish Iran on Tuesday. Diplomatic measures are also under consideration.
I think one thing President Trump is very good at is always keeping all of his options on the table, and airstrikes would be one of the many, many options that are on the table for the commander-in-chief. Diplomacy is always the first option for the president. He's told all of you last night that what you're hearing publicly from the Iranian regime is quite differently from the messages the administration is receiving privately, and I think the president has an interest in exploring those messages.
What sparked speculation about an American strike was Trump's statement on Sunday.
There seem to be some people killed that aren't supposed to be killed. These are violent, if you call them leaders, I don't know if they're leaders or just they rule through violence. But we're looking at it very seriously. The military is looking at it. And we're looking at some very strong options. We'll make a determination.
In Tehran, supporters of Khamenei regime held anti-America protests on Monday. Iranian President Masoud Pezeshkian joined the rally held in support of the government. Tehran declared it is ready for talks with the US on the basis of mutual respect, but is prepared to fight if required.
Preemptive operations are not on our agenda. We do not seek war, but we are fully prepared for it. Indeed, even more prepared than before the previous war.
Trump's latest 25% tariff will hit China the most, as it buys more than 80% of the oil shipped from Iran. While the world is on the tenterhooks after the developments in Iran, a full-blown escalation into a US-Iran war could be many days away, because any such conflict will affect American allies like Saudi Arabia and UAE and disrupt global oil supply. Bureau Report, India Today.
And my first guest tonight, escalating US-Iran situation, is a special guest, Ambassador John Bolton, former Assistant to the President for National Security Affairs. Appreciate your joining us, Mr. Bolton. You know President Donald Trump better than most. When he says, as he has done today, that the US is considering the strongest possible options if the crackdown continues in Tehran, what do you make out of it? What are these strong options that the president could be considering?
Well, I think clearly military force is a possibility. The president announced last night that there would be tariffs of 25% on any country trading with Iran, which in India's case would raise it now to 75% tariff. So that's a sort of extraordinary economic statement. But given the fact the U.S. did use force against Iran's nuclear program along with Israel last year, I think the threat of military force is real. Whether he decides to do it or not, obviously we don't know yet.
But when you say that the threat of military force is real, what are we talking about? Targeted strikes on Iranian military or government sites that aim to topple the regime? Or surely a military operation against a country like Iran is fraught with risk. So what, according to you, is the most conceivable, feasible military option here?
Well, it would be nice if Trump had an objective. If his objective was regime change, that would give you one potential set of targets. If it's just to make a demonstration in support of the protesters in Iran, that might be something else. I think regime change should be the objective. So I would advise that he go after headquarters of the Revolutionary Guard, again, the nuclear program, the ballistic missile program. But with Trump, we don't know what his objective is. And I don't think it's enough just to simply have a military strike and say, there, see, we supported the protesters, unless it's linked to a bigger program.
But can I push you on that, Ambassador Bolton? Because if I were to contrast what the US did with Venezuela, a country not located too far away from the US, you could argue within the Western sphere of influence, the so-called Donroe doctrine that is being spoken about. Contrast that with Iran, at the heart, in a way, of West Asia, a country thousands of miles away from the United States. Are you seriously saying the United States could actually push for a military regime militarily for a regime change in Iran that would be acceptable in a way to the countries across the world?
Well, I think it might be acceptable to the resistance, to the opposition in Iran. People said if the U.S. ever attacked Iran's nuclear program, it would rally the people of Iran to the side of the regime. There'd be turmoil all over the Middle East. Well, last year we did, and today in Iran, the people are out in the streets chanting "Death to the Ayatollahs." So I think that there's good reason for this, not just the oppression of the people of Iran, but there never is going to be strategic stability and peace in the Middle East as long as the Ayatollahs are in charge in Tehran. Now, whether Trump will adopt that view, I don't know, but he certainly left the door open to it with his recent remarks.
But how do you then interpret how the Iranians are looking at it, Ambassador Bolton? Iran says all channels of communication with the US are open, but it is ready for war if Washington wants to stress it, and Iran is prepared for all options. Do you see Iran retaliating fiercely if the United States chooses, as you say, the possible objective of regime change? Is that something that might make the Trump administration a little reluctant to take that maximalist option right at this stage?
Well, the Iranian government has certainly threatened retaliation. That's true, and the use of military force can be graduated. You can take out the headquarters of the Revolutionary Guard, but not much else. I mean, I think we will certainly destroy whatever remaining or new air defenses Iran has put in since the 12-day war. But the fleet, the Iranian fleet in the Gulf might be another target. Again, the Iranians threatened retaliation as we were striking the nuclear weapons program, and after that was over, they did exactly nothing. So their capabilities have been degraded not just by the U.S. attack, but more by the Israeli attack, which lasted for 12 days against ballistic missiles and against other military targets. The people in Iran, by the way, read those attacks as being very specifically targeted and as indicating that if the regime couldn't protect its nuclear weapons program, its crown jewel, that the regime's days were numbered. And I think that was an accurate reading.
So do you believe the regime's days are numbered, that the peaceful protesters are actually large enough now to actually be in a position to remove the long-standing clerical elite of Iran? Do you believe that these protests are not just another expression of dissent? They're much more than that?
I think the regime is at its most unpopular point since taking power in 1979. And I think the gravity of the situation is demonstrated by how repressive the regime has been in reacting to it. The media reports hundreds killed this past weekend. I've heard around the country that number's really in the thousands. We've seen this kind of approach before, but the regime hasn't toppled. I just think it's weak enough now, approaching the point where they're going to have to pick a new supreme leader pretty soon. That would be a point of maximum danger for the regime. And it's why I think help from the outside, from the United States and from others, if it's done properly and in coordination with the opposition, could have a major impact this time.
Can I just turn back to a point you made about tariffs? The president, of course, Trump has warned that any country doing business with Iran will face a new tariff of 25% on its exports to the US. Now, this could have, as you said, bearings on countries like India. It could also affect the Chinese, for example. Do you believe that weaponizing tariffs is the right way forward, considering that already Tehran's economy is strained, inflation 48.6%? Will that affect the view of the people of Iran, or do you believe tariffs are a legitimate way to put pressure on the Iranian regime?
Well, if we followed our constitution, they might be, but we may hear from the Supreme Court in the next few days that these tariffs are unconstitutional. This is a threat by Trump. It actually hasn't been put in place. I think what we should be doing is clamping down on Iranian oil sales in violation of our sanctions. We've seen in the case of Venezuela going after what has been called the ghost ships or the ghost fleet, these rust bucket tankers that carry sanctioned Venezuelan oil, sanctioned Iranian oil, sanctioned Russian oil. If we could eliminate the ghost fleet, it would put enormous pressure on all three of those countries.
But how would you respond to those who are saying that members of the Islamic State have been dispatched into Iranian territory to execute terrorist attacks, that US is involved in information warfare, covert operations? Is the United States running any risks by the kind of escalating war of words that it is intervening in Iran's internal affairs? Whether a regime has to be toppled has to be decided by the people of the United States, not by the White House?
Well, I think there's zero chance we're doing anything with the Islamic State other than trying to eliminate it in Western Iraq and Syria. I think certainly clandestine action against Iran is something that would be on the table, if not for us, for Israel. And I do believe, because of the threat that the Iranian nuclear weapons program, ballistic missiles, its support for international terrorism, its threats to murder Iranian exiles and present and former U.S. government officials, myself included, constitute plenty of legitimate grounds to overthrow the regime, which I think would be the one way you could see Iran returning to the community of nations in the way that it occupied before the 1979 revolution.
A final question then. There are two views of how Donald Trump conducts foreign policy, Ambassador Bolton. One is that he's a disruptor and does things when you least expect him to do it. The other is that Trump always chickens out, that while he may engage in this escalating war of words with the Iranians, there's only so far he'll go to without actually going the whole hog. What's your sense? Do you believe that Donald Trump this time means business when he says we are prepared to exercise all options, including the military one?
Unfortunately, we don't know, because he doesn't think in terms of grand strategy. He doesn't have a philosophy. He doesn't even do policy the way we normally understand that term. His decisions have been described accurately as transactional, ad hoc, episodic, and seen through the prism of what benefits Donald Trump. He may feel, in the case of Iran, a country he's been concerned about. He opposed the 2015 nuclear deal in his first campaign for president. This could be a moment when he sees it to be in his advantage to take very strong action against the government. I think we'll know within a few days.
And will he have the full support, you believe, or a majority support within the United States if he were to strike on Iran at this moment?
Yeah, yes, I do. I mean, I think, again, the support for the strike against the nuclear facilities, some members of Congress complained about it, but everybody thought the world was a safer place with those facilities destroyed. And I think the world would be a safer place if the regime were replaced by a government that was responsive to the people of Iran.
Ambassador John Bolton, for joining me there and giving us a perspective on that. Thanks very much, former Assistant to the President for National Security Affairs. Thanks very much for joining me.
Thanks for having me.
So will the United States actually go ahead and launch the airstrikes on Iran? Is Trump actually looking now to topple another regime, this time in Tehran? And how will the Khamenei regime respond now? Are we heading for another conflict that could spread across West Asia and affect India as well? Joining me now, KC Singh is a former Indian ambassador. He served in Tehran. Roxana Chegini is an Iranian-born cultural analyst, advocate for democratic transition there. Burzin Wagma, Center for Iranian Studies at SOAS at the University in London. I appreciate all of you joining us on the show tonight. I want to come to you first, Burzin. What are you making out of what is happening in Iran at the moment? Are you seeing this now as the tip of the iceberg, and in the days ahead, we could actually see a regime being toppled even without the United States entry? Or do the protesters need US intervention if they are to topple a regime that's been in place for almost 5 decades?
President Trump's rhetoric and intervention threats are entirely welcome because at least someone in the Western world has the guts and the moral gumption to state something when most Western capitals, including London, do not wish to provoke Iran and turn a blind eye to what is happening. As a government, Tiananmen style is mowing down its own population in cold blood. As all 31 provinces are racked by violence and protests, there are no insurrectionists or Israelis or Mossad agents on ground. This is a populist movement, and what makes it distinct from previous protests, which have happened endemically since July 1999, in this case, is that the regime has also lost its traditional Shia middle class and low middle class support of the bazaar, the merchants who, with their patronage networks and the clergy, are hand in glove and have bolstered the regime, and who ironically were the ones who toppled Pahlavi back in 78,
But do they still need the US? Do they still need Trump to intervene, Burzine, for actually a regime change, given the fact, the kind of command and fear factor, some would say, critics of this regime would say, it's hit Iranian society over the years. Can you actually have a regime change without US intervention in Tehran?
Well, that depends on how much you ratchet up pressure on the regime, because nobody is doing that, but it is time for some kinetic action. Otherwise, this regime doesn't think twice about killing its own population in cold blood, be it 12-year-old children who are not Zionist agents, obviously, and it insults anyone's intelligence to tell me that they are, or women and children and the unarmed, including old people. So, and it's not just a Gen Z protest asking for civil liberties and less restrictive practices. It includes the poorest sections of Iranian society this time too, including the working class, including Tehran's tram and bus unions, which is a very powerful union that has come out in favor of it, including the unions last year of the railway and the textile sectors. So it has to build up as a quantum of force. And please remember, we are just into a fortnight. It took 13 months to topple the Shah, what started from Jan 78 until his departure in Jan 79. And today it's not just President Trump, but we have bipartisan support from the Democrats and the left strand, when Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez also waded in by saying that we stand with the protesters who are being mowed down by the government. So there is bipartisan support now on the Hill to see something through.
You're saying to see something, but Roxana Chegini, in any regime can only be toppled once it loses its moral and political authority. Do you believe it's lost that? Or do you believe it needs a push from the outside? I come back to it. Do you believe it's strong enough from within?
I believe what we are witnessing is not a demonstration, is a revolution, is the result of 47 years of resilience. And it came to a point that a change, a revolution is absolutely needed. And the world can see that. We cannot continue with this regime. We cannot count on this regime. We cannot expect this regime is going to get better. And I think a help from outside, Donald Trump is the only one who is undiplomatic enough to make a big decision and be unpolitically correct and make this decision and help Iran for a democratic transition. I think that
impose a member of the Shah family on the people of Iran. There will be those who will say this is Iran's issues. Iran's internal affairs cannot be decided in Washington.
What is happening with Prince Reza Pahlavi? He wants only to be the leader of this transition. And then we are hoping that we can get a free vote, that people can say what they want. Do you want the president? Do you want the monarchy continuing? And that's only the transition. And this is not, world cannot close their eyes to what's happening. And this killing is not only in each demonstration. They are killing from the day one. Their strategy is based on killing whatever. Their strategy is based on exporting their ideology to the world, to the Europe, to America, to Australia. I think that's time, and probably it will going to happen soon.
Let me let me bring in Casey Singh. But before I, Casey, why US may strike Iran? A, because regime change, as we've been seeing, is high on Donald Trump's agenda. The Ayatollah's Khamenei regime, many believe, is at its weakest. Crisis in leadership, particularly after what we saw with the US-Israel airstrikes in 2025, killing many senior members of the Revolutionary Guards. Khamenei himself is 86 years old, no clear line of succession. Iran's proxies like Hamas, Hezbollah have been to some extent decimated. And the US airstrikes on the nuke plants in 2025 may give them extra confidence. On the other hand, why US may not strike Iran, a full-blown war different to a nuclear strike, Iran has shown it can penetrate Israel's Iron Dome. Trump could push for human rights reforms instead of a regime change. War could make US allies like Saudi Arabia, UAE prone to US attacks. There are US bases in West Asia. Where do you think, on balance, given what you're seeing happening in Tehran, where do you think the Trump regime will veer at this moment? And what's the critical factor behind any final decision?
Rajdeep, there's lack of clarity because you've heard 2 points of view here, which have taken a very pro-protester stand. There is also, they are saying there is no Mossad there, but Jerusalem Post has carried an article saying Mossad is involved with it, very much in this. And there were, you see, only 60% of the population of Iran is Persian or Persian origin. Then you've got Azeris, you've got all kinds of other minorities. So it's very easy to incite them from neighboring countries and get people within Iran if you give them arms and you force them and start it up. Now, the question is, how does America, by attacking militarily without boots on the ground, simply by attacking from the air, how do they depose a government? Because don't forget, this is an alliance between the clerics now and the IRGC. And the IRGC is very strongly enmeshed into the businesses in Iran. So it is not the old bazaar is no longer as strong as it used to be, say, in 1979. Just because the shops are shut doesn't mean that business is not operational, because IRGC is controlling a huge part of the business sector. And they have been preparing for this. They've got help from Russia. The Chinese have come out in open support. And last thing they want is Americans to be able to foist some new person in Tehran to run that country. So it's not, and then GCC is divided. It's not like it happened the last time that Iran was attacked. Saudis and the Emiratis have fallen out. Saudis are busy pushing Emiratis out of Yemen, out of southern Sudan, out of Libya. So the GCC itself, the ruling families are split. Now, what is it the American can do? Now, if America had a button they could press and remove the government, there was no need to have announced 25% tariffs. Now, tariffs mean you want to exert more economic pressure on Iran. So if you are taking a military step and you're going to eliminate that, what is the need to, if supposing they remove the government, will he then remove the tariffs tomorrow? It doesn't make any sense. And the tariffs will affect India, will affect China, will affect Germany.
But more than that, Casey, more than that, Casey, the fact that you mentioned the Chinese, the Russians, this could drag in several other nations. Boots on the ground is something the Americans would surely be wary of in a country like Iran.
Absolutely. And without boots on the ground, what support do you give to the popular protesters? And reports that are coming out are conflicting. Some are saying that the Iranians have managed to get more or less control of the protesting situation of the protesters. Their foreign minister said, we are going to just stop the control over the internet. In fact, some calls are coming out now. Internet restrictions have not been removed, but the calls are coming out of Iran. So some restrictions have been removed. They wouldn't do it if they were really completely under pressure. And definitely, if there's a massive attack on the IRGC and the regime, they've said that, and they've got a huge collection of missiles. And they say last time they made a mistake and they waited, and their missile sites were taken out. This time they said we'll go after our targets, including US bases and Israel and whatever else they want to attack. And that can widen the conflict. And that is what India is concerned about. We have 8 million persons of Indian origin in the Gulf. Oil price will go up. So far, it hasn't gone up. Oil price gets spiked. And then you will not have stability for a long time. So it's not clear to me what is it that America can do militarily which can change the equations in Iran overnight or within a week.
So, Burzin Wagmar, easy. This is not, the question I asked John Bolton also earlier, this is not Venezuela, this is Iran, a mighty ancient civilization, a mighty strong army with allies like Russia and China with whom they do major deals, with ballistic missiles, with the possibility of using them against any possible adversary. Do you believe that there is more hope? Then the reality seems to suggest that if they hold out, the regime will last.
Russia and China are going to do nothing to save this regime. If you understand what Chinese modus operandi is when it comes to not interfering in the internal affairs, and China takes a decided stance on Middle East matters as such, because it doesn't have a direct impact on it. The only Chinese and Russian contribution I have seen so far, Rajdeep, is of surveillance technology and intelligence inputs for crowd control, facial recognition, and deep packet information technology, which Beijing has transferred to Tehran after the Green Movement of 2009. And fat chance Putin is going to do anything with the current Ukrainian imbroglio to upset Trump. Putin has no love lost, and as Moscow has made it plain over the years that they do not want to see a nuclearized Iran too, when it was part of the JCPO arrangements as such. Point number one. Point number two, the IRGC controls 60% of the economy. That is absolutely right, and they are the Rottweilers of the regime that keep it going. But unlike 1979, you have today 80% who are opportunists, 20% ideologues. Peel away the 80% opportunists and tell them that this is a tottering ship and they could come across. Then there is the question of the Artesh, or the traditional military, the tri-services. The regime does not trust the military because they have always felt that they are a professional outfit, which indeed they are, compared to the guards who are an ideologically based outfit. And there is no love lost, and there's been consistent tension between them over the last 47 years.
So
something has to give. Let me finish, please. Something has to give if the police stops firing, or if the Artesh, the tri-services and the military armed forces refuse to stop shooting at their own population. That is a point where we can see a chink in the armor.
Okay.
Because nothing will happen until then as such.
Final word, a quick word, Casey. Do you see this as a moment of a revolution? Or is that, as both my other guests have said, that this is a moment of revolution in Iran? Or is that an exaggeration? A quick answer.
I think it's a bit of an exaggeration. Brzezinski, who was the National Security Advisor in 1979, in his biography, he's written that the problem was that Shah would use violence intermittently. He would use it and people will get killed, then he will step back. Then he'll ring up Washington and say, what do I do now? And they said, look, we can't be telling you to shoot at your people. You are the Shah. Take a step on your own. And there's a phrase that Brzezinski used. He says, by constantly applying pressure, stepping back, he immunized the population. They stopped getting scared, and that's when defections began. Defections don't begin from the Revolutionary Guard in a week or 10 days or 15 days. It takes a long time, like it did in 79. And it needs consistent pressure for it to happen. And I don't think anybody, even those who are in the Revolutionary Guard, would trust Trump. That is a problem. You don't know, because tomorrow he may change his mind. He's already said he doesn't want Shah's son to run Iran. He'll do the same thing he did in Venezuela. He would like a Venezuela-like solution, which is get from within the regime another face which plays the game with him.
Let me leave it there. And that's not easy, because Tehran is clearly not Caracas in different ways. But we'll see how Iran, what happens on the ground there, because whatever happens in Iran will influence the world, including India. I appreciate my guest joining me here on my big talking point. I want to turn from there to Mumbai, where the high voltage campaign for the prestigious Mumbai civic body elections has finally drawn to a close. All eyes now on voting on Thursday, with results on Friday. It's Asia's richest municipal corporation, India's wealthiest civic body. The BMC has been under administrative rule since March 2022, but dominated by the Sena for over 2 decades. We've seen lots of alliances being shifted and a bruising fight taking place with high voltage attacks on each other, including, dare one say, on Tamilians, with remarks like Rasmalai, Lungi and Pungi that were aimed by Raj Thackeray at the BJP and Anna Malai. Clearly at the moment, it's a do or die battle for the Shiv Sena in particular. Who will rule Mumbai? That's a question I asked by going to the Shiv Sena heartland of Worli in Mumbai. This is my ground report. Now, one of the crucial battles within a battle in this BMC election is that of who is the real Shiv Sena, that of the Thackeray cousins or that of former Chief Minister Eknath Shinde. Is it the Mashal or the Dhanush Ban? Let's go and find out from the people here in Worli, a heartland of the Marathi Manus. Come with me. काय होणार इलेक्शन मध्ये?
यही
एक बाजू में है राज ठाकरे, उद्धव ठाकरे, दूसरी तरफ बीजेपी और एकनाथ शिंदे। असली सेना कौन है?
आएगा राज ठाकरे और उद्धव ठाकरे।
राज ठाकरे और
उद्धव आएगा, उनका काम है ना इधर।
उनका काम है। देवेंद्र फडणवीस बोलते वो लोगों को नौकरी दे रहे हैं, ये लोग केवल मराठी मानुस के नाम पर आपको फंसा रहे हैं।
ऐसा कुछ नहीं,
पहले से है। चुनाव में क्या होगा? व्हाट विल हैपन? कौन सा असली मराठी मानुस की पार्टी कौन है?
I think BJP.
बीजेपी। Why BJP?
Because of the development agenda.
डेवलपमेंट एजेंडा। आपको लगता है फडणवीस जी ने किया है डेवलपमेंट मुंबई के लिए?
I think हाँ।
क्या किया है?
जो भी प्रोजेक्ट्स हैं ट्रांसपोर्टेशन में और ट्रैफिक कंजेशन कम करने में।
क्या नाम है आपका?
अमित दुबे।
अमित दुबे। तो एक तरफ उत्तर भारतीय बनाम मराठी मानुस हो रहा है क्या ये चुनाव?
नहीं
कि उत्तर भारतीय ज्यादातर बीजेपी के साथ और मराठी मानुस दूसरी तरफ?
I don't think so. It is normal election. It is depend on development agenda only.
और आपको लगता है ये जो उद्धव ठाकरे, राज ठाकरे ने डेवलपमेंट किया है या फडणवीस शिंदे ने?
ठीक है, दोनों ने किया है, लेकिन सर मेन इशू डेवलपमेंट का ही रहेगा।
डेवलपमेंट का रहेगा।
Yes,
ये
sir.
कोई मराठी नॉन मराठी का इशू नहीं है?
कोई इशू नहीं है सर।
खरी सेना कोणाची? असली सेना किसकी है अभी?
शिवसेना।
शिवसेना किसकी?
ठाकरे साहब की।
ठाकरे साहब की?
उदय ठाकरे साहब की शिवसेना है।
पर इस
असली शिवसेना वही है। मेरे को तो पहले से ही शिवसेना ही पसंद है, जो मेरी राय है।
अभी तो दो से शिवसेना हो गए हैं।
शिवसेना सर कोई असली है कोई नकली है, वो तो
असली कौन सी है?
असली अपना उदय ठाकरे साहब।
क्या नाम है आपका?
मेरा नाम अर्जुन यादव।
अर्जुन यादव जी। ये मैं सुन रहा हूँ कि उत्तर भारतीय भाजपा के साथ मराठी मानुस दूसरी तरफ, सही है गलत है?
देखिए, मेरा मानना है, मेरा पर्सनल मानना है कि राजनीतिक पार्टी उनको बोलना चाहिए विकास के बारे में। लेकिन अभी कल जो शिवाजी पार्क में रैली थी, वहाँ पे मराठी मानुस अभी मौ से महाराष्ट्र और मौ से महाविकास, इस पे चर्चा ज़्यादा होना चाहिए, ताकि मराठी तो आज हम भी मराठी बोलना चाहिए और हम लोग को आता ही बोलना।
येतं का तुम्हाला मराठी?
येतं। मी
बोलू शकता का?
ऑफकोर्स बोलू शकता।
नाही, बोला ना मला माझ्याबरोबर मराठी।
आय लव्ह मी मराठी, मी मराठी बोलू शकतो। आणि माझा एक रिक्वेस्ट आहे, मराठी माणूस ह्यावर राजनीती नको।
मराठी माणूस पे राजनीती नहीं चाहिए।
नको।
अमर जवळे काय होणार या इलेक्शन मध्ये? मराठी मानुस की पार्टी का इलेक्शन है कि असली शिवसेना कौन है, या विकास का इलेक्शन है? किसने विकास किया है?
विकास तो अभी तक देखने तो नहीं मिला। विकास कहाँ तक पहुँचा है और कहाँ है, लेकिन यहाँ पे हिंदू राष्ट्र लेके बहुत सारा राजकारण चल रहा है। तो अभी तक मेरे को वही समझ में नहीं आ रहा है कि अगर हिंदू क्या है, मेरे को अभी तक उसका मीनिंग ही समझ में नहीं आया। जो कुछ ले रहे हैं वो सब लोग हिंदू 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 करके राजकारण कर रहे हैं।
वोट के लिए कर रहे हैं।
बस वोट के लिए राजकारण चल रहा है।
नहीं हुआ है मुंबई में।
अभी मुंबई का विकास देखेंगे। BMC का इलेक्शन आ गया है, बारिश में विकास दिख जाता है।
क्या पोर्टल हो जाता है? गड्ढे हो जाते हैं।
गड्ढे हो जाते हैं। महंगाई बढ़ रही है।
महंगाई पर असली शिवसेना कौन है? ये लड़ाई में एकता, एक तरफ एकनाथ शिंदे है, दूसरी तरफ ठाकरे।
असली शिवसेना है वो ठाकरे बंधू की ही आहे। मराठी माणसाची शिवसेना फक्त उद्धव बाळासाहेब ठाकरे यांचीच आहे।
म्हणजे एका परिवारची झाली ती?
नाही 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 नाही,
परिवार याने वही है।
एका परिवारापर्यंत मी बोलतच नाहीये। आपण जर इतिहास बघितला, आम्ही लहान होतो, लहानपणापासून जर बघतोय तर शिवसेना ही घडवली ही फक्त बाळासाहेब ठाकरेंनीच.
वो तो एक जमाने में, अभी तो उद्धव और राज ठाकरे क्या ये एक ही परिवार चलाएंगे शिवसेना?
मैंने किधर बोला ऐसे एक ही परिवार चलाएंगे, लेकिन मराठी में अगर मराठी टिकनी है, मुंबई में मराठी होनी चाहिए. मुंबईमध्ये जर मराठी पाहिजे तर राज साहेब आणि उद्धव ठाकरेंशिवाय पर्याय नहीं.
अच्छा, ये मुझे बताइए, शिवाजी पार्क में रैली हुई, वहाँ राज ठाकरे ने कहा कि अन्ना मलाई को एक तरह से रसमलाई कह दिया और अशब्द यूज किए एक तरह से.
बरोबर है ना, जरा
उसमें कोई दिक्कत नहीं है, लुंगी पुंगी इस तरह का भाषण.
बरोबर आहे. आमच्या राज्यात येऊन जर आम्हाला दुसरं कोणी शिकवत असेल तर लुंगीची आम्ही पुंगी वाजवणारच.
लुंगीची पुंगी वाजवणार तुम्हाला, काही प्रॉब्लेम नाही तुम्हाला?
काही प्रॉब्लेम नाही. आमचं राज्य आहे, मुंबई ही महाराष्ट्राची आहे आणि तिथे जर येऊन दुसरं कोणी जर राज्य करत असेल तर लुंगीची पुंगी वाजवावीच लागणार.
विकास का मतलब क्या है आपके लिए?
हे मुलांना नोकऱ्या भेटल्या पाहिजेत. आता किती मुलं शिकलेली आहेत त्यांना जॉब नाही आहे. अशीच मुलं फिरतायत, ग्रॅज्युएशन होऊन मुलं संडास बाथरूम साफ करतायत.
ग्रेजुएशन होके संडास बाथरूम साफ कर रहा है, आप कह रहे हैं किसी को नौकरी नहीं मिल रहा है?
नाही भेटत आहे.
और आपको नहीं लगता है कोई पार्टी ये नौकरी देने में
रेशनिंग एवढं महाग केलंय, दागिने सोनं एवढं महाग केलंय, गरीब माणूस स्वतःच्या मुलांचं लग्न तरी कसं करणार? हा, त्याच्यामध्ये तुम्ही लोकांनी एवढी महागाई केली आहे की एकटा माणूस कमावणारा असेल तर तो कसा घर चालवणार? 10 आणि 12 हजार रुपये पगार, त्याच्यापेक्षा जास्त पगार तर कुठेच नाहीये कुठच्याच कंपन्यांमध्ये.
राज ठाकरे आणि उद्धव ठाकरे म्हणतात हे मराठी माणूसची अस्मितेचा इलेक्शन आहे. दुसऱ्या बाजूला देवेंद्र फडणवीस म्हणतात मी विकास आणणार आहे, नोकरी आणणार आहे. तुम्हाला विश्वास आहे का कोणावर? नाही, कोणावर विश्वास नाहीये.
सर्वे फक्त इलेक्शन होईपर्यंतच बोलणार, नंतर कोणी लक्ष
हिंदुत्व राम मंदिर बांधलंय हे सरकार म्हणते, आम्ही एवढं हिंदुत्वासाठी केलंय, मेट्रो बांधली.
बघू आता, प्रत्येकाचं मत आहे.
प्रत्येकाचं मत आहे, पण तुमचा विश्वास जास्त नाहीये लोकांमध्ये, या नेत्यांमध्ये. किसी को देखकर आपको लगता है ये कुछ करेंगे?
अभी तक कुछ हुआ? जो आगे हुआ
नहीं हुआ.
नहीं, आम आदमियों के लिए कुछ नहीं हुआ.
मुंबई के आम आदमी के लिए कुछ नहीं हुआ.
नहीं हुआ. नौकरी वोकरी किसी को कुछ नहीं मिली. बस ये कि रोड को खोदना है और रोड को बनाना है. बस
रोड को खोदना है, रोड को बनाना है, इसी में समय जाता है.
हाँ, इसी में पैसा जाता है.
Mumbai's perennial problem, road construction. Corporators are accused of making money on road constructions. Roads break down, repair the road again. क्या होगा चुनाव में? हाँ, असली सेना कौन है? उद्धव राज ठाकरे की सेना एक तरफ, उनकी जो अलायंस है, दूसरी बाजू में एकनाथ शिंदे, देवेंद्र फडणवीस.
यहाँ पे तो उद्धव ही चलेगा.
यहाँ पे उद्धव चलेगा, क्यों?
काम है ना.
क्या देवेंद्र फडणवीस कहते हैं मेट्रो किया है, कोस्टल रोड बांधा है, ये सब उनकी सरकार में हुआ है.
सबके सरकार में सभी हुआ है.
हाँ,
इन्होंने परमिशन ली, इन्होंने वो पूरा किया, लेकिन जो रियलिस्टिक जो परमिशन दी वो तो BMC ने दी. वो तो उद्धव ठाकरे के उसमें ही आई है ना.
ये मराठी मानुस का चुनाव है या ये हिंदुत्व का चुनाव है, विकास का चुनाव है, किस मुद्दे का चुनाव है?
मराठी मानुस का चुनाव है.
वो कह रहे हैं कि लोग कहते हैं कि ये कॉर्पोरेटर और शाखा प्रमुख ने पैसे भी बहुत बनाए हैं.
अभी वो तो बीड़ी चाल में रहते, पैसे बनाते तो फ्लाइट में निकल जाते, बीड़ी चाल छोड़ के जाते, पैदल तो नहीं चलते.
क्या सबसे बड़ा काम क्या हुआ है यहाँ?
बहुत बीड़ी चाल के अंदर आप देख लो ना, जितनी फैसिलिटी देनी चाहिए तो उतने दे दिए उन्होंने, और अभी जो बनेगी उसमें भी वो देंगे, 100% देंगे.
चलो, ये जो कार जा रहा है मराठी बनाम नॉन मराठी चल रहा है उत्तर भारतीय और महाराष्ट्र के बीच में, ऐसा कुछ है या कोई नहीं?
ऐसा तो नहीं होना चाहिए. इंडिया में कैसा है, इंडिया तो पूरा सबके लिए है.
हाँ, कोई ऐसा डिवाइड नहीं जमीन पर, बस नेता करते हैं.
महाराष्ट्र का अपना कोई प्रॉब्लम नहीं. किसका?
मुंबई मेरी जान है, यहाँ सब भी आ सकते हैं.
सब आ सकते हैं, सब जा सकते हैं.
चलो, है दिल है मुश्किल जीना यहाँ, जरा हट के जरा बच के, ये है मुंबई मेरी जान. वेरी गुड, नाइस पॉजिटिव नोट on which to hope that whatever happens in the election, Mumbai wins. It's high time India's commercial capital wins and ensures the best quality civic infrastructure for the citizens of this city, irrespective of which community they come from. Will that happen? We'll wait and see. Rajdeep Sardesai in Worli, Mumbai for India Today. Okay, from Mumbai, let's turn to the big political controversy of the day, because a political storm broke out in Delhi after the BJP hosted a delegation of China's ruling Communist Party at a time when India and China remained locked in a tense standoff over the Shaksgam Valley. The rare meeting comes nearly 4 years after the deadly Galwan clashes and triggered sharp questions from the opposition, with the Congress accusing the BJP of sending mixed signals to Beijing, even as China pushes fresh territorial claims. Take a look.
हमें बताइए कि इन क्लोज डोर मीटिंग्स में क्या हुआ, भारत के कितने हितों का समझौता करके आप आए हैं।
इसकी नींव जो है 50 की सदी में 60 में जब पंडित नेहरू जी की सरकार थी, उस समय क्या क्या हुआ सबको जानकारी है, तो कांग्रेस पार्टी इसमें बयानबाजी ना करे।
A major political storm has erupted after the BJP hosted a delegation of the Chinese Communist Party in Delhi. Just as India and China face off over the Shaksgam Valley. The Chinese delegation, led by Vice Minister Sun Haiyan, met senior BJP leaders at party headquarters. This marks the first high-level political engagement between BJP and CPC since the Galwan clashes in 2020. CCP leaders also met RSS General Secretary Thackeray at RSS headquarters. The closed-door meeting lasted 30 minutes. Sources say it was only a courtesy call held at the CCP's request with no formal agenda. The Congress has gone on the offensive, saying China is pushing fresh territorial claims in the Shaksgam Valley, even as BJP leaders are engaging Beijing's ruling party and questioned whether Galwan, Ladakh, Arunachal and Shaksgam were raised during the talks.
लगातार भारत को नुकसान चीन की तरफ से पहुंचता है। इन बैठकों की वजह से पहुंचता है या इन बैठकों के बावजूद पहुंचता है? कल बैठक हुई और कुछ घंटों में शक्सगाम घाटी पर उन्होंने दावा ठोक दिया। हमें बताइए कि इन क्लोज डोर मीटिंग्स में क्या हुआ, भारत के कितने हितों का समझौता करके आप आए हैं।
China is building infrastructure in Shaksgam Valley under China-Pakistan Economic Corridor. Pakistan has illegally ceded 5,180 square kilometers of this area to China, a move India has never recognized.
We have never recognized the so-called China-Pakistan boundary agreement that happened in 1963. We do not recognize the so-called China-Pakistan Economic Corridor either, which passes through Indian territory.
But China has rejected India's claim, insisting that the territory belongs to China.
It is fully justified for China to conduct infrastructure construction on its own territory. China and Pakistan in the 1960s signed a boundary agreement and delimited the boundary between the two countries, which is the right of China and Pakistan as sovereign countries. The China-Pakistan boundary agreement and the CPEC do not affect China's position on the Kashmir issue, and the position remains unchanged.
As China tightens its grip on Shaksgam and India pushes back, the BJP-CPC meeting has now become a major political flashpoint in New Delhi. Bureau Report, India Today.
Okay, just enough time on the show tonight to bring you our Good News Today story. I want you to meet Akash Saroj, a gig worker who's delivering more than just food. Even while working 12-hour shifts, Saroj follows his father's advice and is donating a big chunk of his earnings to charity. Take a look at our Good News Today story. And remember, there's always good news in India. Thanks for watching. Stay well, stay safe. Good night, Shubhratri. Jai Hind. Namaskar.
Akash Saroj delivers more than just food. No, we are not talking about his dancing skills. He spends 50% of his income on helping the needy. Saroj, who lives in Bhalswa slum in Delhi, has been delivering food for 5 years. What changed the course of his life is his father's death over 2 years ago.
जो कुछ भी कमाया है आज उन्हीं पैसों के कुछ हिस्से से आज मैं लोगों के लिए कंबल लेके आया हूँ। तो चलिए स्टार्ट करते हैं।
मेरे पापा ने मुझसे एक बात की थी तो बेटा तू कुछ भी काम कर, तू आगे तू कुछ भी बड़ा आदमी बन या मत बन, कोई दिक्कत नहीं, बट अपने कर्म अच्छे करियो, लोगों की हेल्प करियो। वही मेरे पापा के कुछ शब्द थे जो अब तक मुझे याद है और मैं करता हूँ।
After his father's death, he became a full-time delivery man to pay off a debt of 3 lakh rupees incurred on the treatment.
मेरी एवरेज जो इनकम होती है मिनिमम 800 से लेके 1000 तक हो जाती है, जिसमें कि मेरा 300 से 400 का मेरा पेट्रोल लग जाता है गाड़ी का, तो बचता है वही 600 रुपये 600 समथिंग। तो फिर उसमें भी कम से कम मैं लोगों की 300-400 की हेल्प कर देता हूँ।
Saroj works for roughly 12 hours a day but finds time to help.
अभी ठंड चल रही है, किसी के पास कोई कंबल नहीं है, जितना मुझसे होता है मैं कंबल बांटता हूँ।
Saroj fondly recollects how one customer recognized him and gave him 500 rupees for charity. He dreams of becoming a choreographer one day. With Manish Chaurasia, Bureau Report, India Today.